Hello everyone, we are back for another video. This time it is a deck profile. We're going to do two this time. One in IRL, one on tabletop, just because for the ones on tabletop, I don't physically have the cards yet, and it's easier to go over when you actually show the cards. But first off, we're going to show off the technically EX-4 Renamon deck. This is one of my favorites. I'm pretty much love like Renamon in the show and Rika, so I made this deck. So I just like to share. So first we're going to start off with the basic for Viximon. Not that surprising. Viximon, simple. Why am I showing? Simple enough. When you use an option card with a cost of 2 or more, draw cards. So it's just to keep drawing cards. So that's just basic. So for the rookies, I do run 4 copies of the EX2 Renamon. So this one, on play, reveal the top 4 cards, grab a QB, Tao Sakuyamon in his name, and 1 Rika. So pretty much just for looking for other members of the line and grabbing the Tamer, which is rather integral to the deck. Inheritable, your turn once per turn when you use an option card that costs 2 or more, gain 1 memory. So that's it. Next up, we do run another 4 of the EX-4 Renamon. So the reason why we run this one at 4, I've seen other people run it at 2, 3. Some people just don't run it at all. Mainly it's just because the inheritable is the same as the one from EX2. This deck is supposed to be very memory efficient, so I just felt like it fit the theme. It also has the novel on play until the end of your opponent's turn. 2 of your opponent's Digimon with 4,000 DP or less can't attack. Really, it's that effect for mostly small Digimon that, you just don't want to be rookie rush, or any Digimon that you could not DP delete. You just smack this down so you could just kind of stun them for 1 turn. Alright, so 4 of those. And then lastly for rookies, I just run 2 copies of the BT-13 Renamon. So on play, reveal the top 4 cards, add an option card with plugin in the same, and 1 yellow tamer. So again, more search. The only reason I run this at 2, even though this does search for tamers, which is very important, is inheritable is when you use an option card with a cost 2 or more, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 2,000 DP for the turn. In my time of piloting this deck is not necessarily trying to DP delete people. DP deletion is a nice byproduct, but for the big bodies, there's really not enough in the basic plugin as it is, at least the plugins that are released right now, to reliably DP delete someone. So I rather gain memory, which could extend my plays, than just try to DP delete 1 Digimon and then, yeah, I deleted Digimon, big deal. So that's just how I run it. I don't really I really don't use the BT-10 one all that much. All right, so for the champions, we run 4 copies of Yokomon. Yokomon on play. Until the end of your opponent's turn, one of your Digimon gains blocker. Nice. This is primarily how you're going to defend yourself in this deck. And also, the nice part, the name of this card is also treated as Cubimon. So this can also be searched by the Renamon from EX2, which is a nicety. 4 costs to play, which is very, very important. One of the problems with the other the other Cubimons is sometimes this deck does brick. And when you only have a champion in hand, I'd rather play one for 4 cost than a 6 drop. Because it just feels bad, especially when the other Cubimon's skills are on Digivolution. At least with this one, on play, I get a blocker out of it. And it's dual color, so if I do want to run something like high-speed plug-in, I don't actually need a tamer on board to use it. Alright, so yeah, that's just what we have for Yokomon. So next up, we do run 2 copies of the EX2 Cubimon. When digivolving with the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 option card, plug in this name to your hand, place the remaining on the bottom in any order. And yeah, like I was saying, 6 drop, 2 to digivolve, and it's a win digivolving skill. So if you have no rookies and you just have to throw down a champion, that's 2 extra memory than the Yokomon. So I really only run these at 2. because of that. Oh, and the inheritable, your turn once per turn when you use an option card with a cost of 2 or more, one of your opponent's Digimon get minus 2,000 DP for the turn. That's pretty much how a vast majority of the level 3, I mean not level 3, the level 4, 5, that's usually their inheritables, at least with this build. Okay, so that's 2 QBmons, and lastly, for champions, we do run, and it is a little unorthodox, I run 2 Ankylomon. So Ankylomon, 4 calls to play, but if you have a blue Digimon on the field like Yokomon or Renamon or any other blue Digimon, you can play this for 3. So that's even 1 cheaper than playing Yokomon. And also, the nice thing about Ankylomon is that its when attacking skill is not once per turn. If you have a blue Digimon in play, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 3,000 DP for the turn. So I'll show why later that can be a game changer. But yeah, that's it for the champions. Next up, we run 3 of the EX-2 Talmon. When Digivolving, you may play 1 Rika from your hand without playing his memory cost. Rika is the staple in this deck. This deck almost cannot function without Rika because of how integrated plugins is with the theme of this deck. So yeah, 8 drop, 3 Digivolve. Inheritable skill, your turn once per turn when you use an option card 2 or more. One of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 2,000 DP. Okay, so that's what we run for there. The last of the level 7, I mean not level 7s, level 5s is I run 4 copies of Domon. Domon is a nice addition. For one, he's also treated as Talmon. But the reason why this is very important to the deck now as it is, you don't have to worry about DP deletion. You don't have to worry about going from, say, 10,000 DP down to 0 to get rid of a tricky monster. Like, you still can't do anything against Digimon like Machinedramon or any Digimon that can't be affected by DP reduction. So that's kind of unfortunate. But on play, when Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less from its own, to its owner's hand. So you only have to get them down to 6,000 DP and then somehow get this out on the field, and then you can just return it back to the hand, which is a nice little addition to the toolbox. Inheritable when you use an option card, etc., so forth and so on, minus 2,000 DP for the turn. All right, so that's all I run for the level 5s. Now, for the level 6s, it is kind of top heavy. I do run 3 Kazuhamons. Kazuhamon has become very important. Truthfully, it could be its own deck, but 12 calls to play, 3 to Digivolve from either color. Also is treated as having Sakuyamon in this name. But when Digivolving, you may use an option card with a cost of 5 or less in your hand without paying the cost. The only drawback to that skill is because this skill still cares about color requirements. So unless you have a tamer on board, you're restricted to only using yellow or blue with this Digimon skill. But it makes up for it. Your turn once per turn. When you use an option card with a cost of 2 or more, you may play 1 Talmon or 1 level 4 or lower yellow or blue Digimon card from this Digimon's Digivolution source without paying its cost. So let's say you built the line Renamon, QBmon, Talmon. So with those 2 inheritables from the level 4 and level 5, you're reducing the Digimon by 4,000 DP. And then Kazuhamons will then play another Digimon, which if you play Domon, any Digimon that was originally 10,000 DP can be bounced back to your opponent's hand. So that's what Kazuhamon has brought to this deck. So that's why I run it at 3. It's kind of important for this deck now, because it does kind of resolve the issue with its single stack nature. So yeah, all right, so that's Kazuhamon. Next, we run 2 copies of Sakuyamon. Sakuyamon is effectively the aggression in this deck that I feel. It's on Digivolution skill, unsuspend one of your Digimon, doesn't matter which one. And for each tamer that you have in play, return 1 option card plugin in this name from your trash to your hand. So you can use a plugin, Digivolve into this card, reclaim it back, and then use the plugin again to abuse whatever the plugin's effect is. But the important part about this is your turn, and it's not once per turn. When you use an option card that costs 2 or more, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 3,000 DP for the turn. So if you belt the tower effectively, whenever you use a 2-cost option card, you're reducing opponent's Digimon's DP by 7,000, which is nice. And if you can use multiple plugins, you can do 10,000, etc., so forth and so on. But really the thing that makes Sakuyamon important is its ability to unsuspend, which will extend your plays. So there we go, that's 2 Sakuyamon. And lastly, for the level 6s, we run 2 Sakuyamon made modes. So Sakuyamon made mode is a multi-faceted tool in this deck. One, you can use it to recover. You can use it to abuse both of a option card skill, whether it has a differing on-play skill than it does a security skill. Also, it can digivolve over other megas, so you can use it for additional draw power. That's a nice one. But one of the best parts about this, other than the recovery, is that you may use one option card with plugin in its name or is yellow and has a cost of 5 or less from your hand without meeting color requirements. So this helps with the crutch that this deck has with needing tamers. Color requirements is very important if you cannot get a tamer. And if you're fighting an opponent like Black or Greymon that pops tamers, you're really coming at a disadvantage with this deck. So that's why the when digivolving skill is really kind of integral to how this deck plays out. The when attacking skill is really good too. This Digimon may digivolve into a Sakuyamon in your hand for a cost of 1, ignoring Digivolution requirements. So you can alter your plays on what you want to do using this card. It's a very good pivot tool and can be used for high levels of aggro if you have the exact hand. And I'll show you the optimal play with this deck if all the stars align somehow. But let's move on. Next, for the only level 7, I am playing around with Shine Greymon Ruin mode. It's a 15k beat stick. 5 to digivolve from purple or yellow. When digivolving and on deletion until the end of your opponent's turn, next turn, all your opponent's Digimon get minus 5,000 DP. So if you have 5 memory, you can come out, digivolve, reduce your opponent's entire board by 5,000, attack, delete itself, and then reduce your opponent's Digimon by 5,000 again. Because end of attack, delete this Digimon and one of your opponent's Digimon, and recover 1. Then if you have a tamer in play, hatch 1 Digi-Egg into an empty space in your breeding area. So one thing I like about this, rather than, because Omnimon Merciful Mode does make sense, but I like this one for the fact that I can digivolve it in raising, and I can still abuse its end of attack skill. It's not only when digivolving, which I think that most level 7s are on digivolving skills for a good portion of them. So that's why I'm still playtesting with Ruin mode. Also, it can be searched out with like Yellow Memory Boost, so that's also a nicety as well. So that's the only level 7. So next we'll move on, of course, to the Tamers. The Tamers, we run 3 copies of Rika. 3 copies of Rika is the maximum, really, that you want on the board at any time, because the 4th one, I've never really been in the scenario when I have 4 plugins that I could just go off, because you need to find a nice balance of how many plugins you actually run in the deck, because too many plugins or too many tamers will clutter this deck up and would just stop it from being able to function. But Rika, start of your turn, memory setter, and your turn. When you attack with a Digimon with Renamon, QB, Tau, or Sakuyamon name, you may suspend this tamer to use 1 option card with plugin in this name from your hand without paying the memory cost. So you attack, you can use a plugin for free. It's really, really good with this deck. I cannot stress that enough. So yeah, 3 Rikas instead of 4. And then I also run 2 Mimi Tachikawa. All turns when a player uses an option card, you may suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory. This is just to continue the memory efficiency that this deck is that it seems to like it wants to do. Use very cheap options or use options for free. Gain memory when you use options. So I feel like this does work. You could run more Rikas, but I think I get more advantage with Mimi Tachikawa. All right, so that's it for the tamers. Next we have the option cards, and which are the life and source blood of this deck. So I only run 2 of Digivolution Plugin S. When you have a tamer in play, ignore color requirements, which is important. Uh, Main skill, draw 1 card, then you can Digivolve into a Digimon whose original Digivolution cost is 3 or less without paying the Digivolution. So you use this, draw a card, Digivolve, draw a card. So you get 2 card draws if you Digivolve using this. And also, security skill, reveal the top 3, pick a Digimon card among them, place it in your hand, then this goes to your hand. So it does also help with just getting more of the line to your hand, because this deck is very piece reliant and you need as much consistency as possible. All right, next up for the plugins, we run 1 copy of Offensive Plugin A. Just gives you Sec +1. Also lets you search a tamer off the security skill. Then we run 1 copy of High Speed Plugin D. Gives you jamming and cannot be blocked. Not to be confused with cannot be redirect. Redirect is still a issue with this deck as well. And it's inheritable. It's security skill, draw a card, then add this to your hand. And then for the last plugin, we run 1 copy of Digital Translator, which name is also treated as plugin. While you have a tamer play, ignore color requirements. Choose one of your level 6 Digimon. So this is only usable at level 6, and only if you have multiple level 6s. Well, 1 on the field and at least 1 in your hand. It may Digivolve into a level 6 Digimon card in your hand with a different name that includes that chosen Digimon's name. So in other words, Kazuhamon can Digivolve into Sakuyamon, vice versa, can Digivolve into Maid Mode. So it allows you to shift depending on what potential scenario that you're in. So it just gives you some flex. So that's it for the plugins. I only run 5 because if you don't, I'll say it again and again, if you do not have a tamer, those cards are dead draws. You cannot use them unless you're using the Talmon, I believe that's from BT-13, or Sakuyamon Maid Mode. So, or if you're using BT-13 Cubimon for draw power. But otherwise, you really can't do anything with them. And it really does hurt the deck. So that's why I only run 5. So for the next option cards, I do run 3 yellow memory boosts just to continue to add some consistency, and also for the 2 extra memory, because this deck needs to manage memory very, very efficiently. All right. Next up, we do run 3 copies of Spiral Masquerade. I flip-flop between Spiral Masquerade and Megalospark. Both can be used off of Sakuyamon Maid Mode skill, but with the addition of Kazuhamon that spawns other Digimon from its source, I feel like this works a little bit better, because not only does it allow you to pepper DP reduction across the board, if you can get 3 Digimon on the field, that's minus 9,000, and then inclusive of whatever the inheritables from your stack. So that's why I run Spiral Masquerade, because it seems like this deck wants to branch out from its single stack now. And then for the last option card, we run the tried and true Reinforcing Memory Boost. Again, for consistency, for the heal, and for the 3 memory. So that's it for how I've planned out each part of this deck. So now I'm going to show you the optimal play for how you can actually OTK someone in 1 turn. And it's very contrived, and it's very timing specific. But let's get into that. All right, so here's the setup. You have to have at least Domon, some form of Talmon, Domon, Cubimon, some type of Renamon in your raising area. 2 Rikas, 1 yellow memory boost in play, and you have to have these cards in your hand in order to get this to work, barring any security bombs. So I'm going to show you how you can effectively make your opponent go from 5 security to game in 1 turn. All right, so let's collect these, and I'm going to go in very slow, specific order. So you move out your let's get some form of memory counter. So you're going to start at 3 memory because you have Rika. So the first thing you want to do is Digivolve for 3, putting you to 0, down to Kazuhamon. Kazuhamon's on Digivolution skill will allow you to use one option for free. You use Offense Plugin A to give you Sec +1. That goes to trash. Your Renamon will give you 1 memory. So now you're at 1. And then, once Kazuhamon's skill fully resolves, it will spawn 1 Domon to the field. Okay. So, the next thing you do is you swing on your opponent's security. Then, you use Rika's skill to rest and activate Digivolution Plugin S, which allows you to draw and then Digivolve into Sakuyamon. Sakuyamon's skill will allow you to unsuspend 1 Digimon and then reclaim both of these plugins back because you have 2 tamers on the field. And these go back to hand. And since this is still within the when attacking window, you can now use Rika's skill in order to activate by resting, once again, Digivolution Plugin S, which allow you to draw, which is inconsequential, trigger Digivolution, into Sakuyamon Maid Mode. So when you Digivolve into Sakuyamon Maid Mode, it allows you to use 1 option for free. We use High Speed Plugin D to give us jamming and cannot be blocked. And then this goes to top of security. So you are swinging on your opponent for 2 checks with a Digimon with jamming and cannot be blocked. Attack connects, security is clear. Your opponent is down to 3 security, we are at 1 memory. We break our yellow memory boost to give us 2 memory to put us to 3. We declare an attack again with Sakuyamon Maid Mode. No, first we have to activate Offensive Plugin A for 2 memory, putting us down to 1, to give Sakuyamon security attack +1. So it's at 3 checks for the next attack. So you swing on your opponent's security, still with jamming, and cannot be blocked. You pay the 1 to Digivolve into now Sakuyamon. Sakuyamon's skill will unsuspend, allow you to grab back any 2 plugins, and now you are still swinging on security for 3 checks with with jamming. That if you don't hit the security bomb, then your opponent goes from 3 security down to 0, and then Sakuyamon can attack once more for game. That is the optimal play for this. You can technically also give yourself some protection by having 1 more Rika and I think it's defensive plugin, the black plugin, to give this unable to be blown up by, unaffected by destruction effects, and I believe blocker reboot. But that's just 1 more level of complexity, and that requires a lot more setup. This one is more plausible. You played 1 Rika, and your opponent hit 1 Rika in security. So it can happen, and you having yellow memory boost isn't that outlandish. But this is the optimal offensive setup for this deck. Alright, for the next deck profile, we have the MirageGaogamon deck. So first we'll start off with the rookies. We run 4 copies of this Gaomon. When attacking once per turn, both players draw the top card of their decks. Contrary to contrary to what you would have think, you want your opponent to draw cards in this deck. It's kind of like the important part of it in order to fulfill the conditions for your top end. So that's why we run this one at 4. All turns when your opponent has 8 or more cards in the hand, this Digimon gains 1000 DP. We also run 4 copies of this Gaomon. On play, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Add 1 Digimon card of Gaogamon in his name and 1 blue tamer card among them to your hand. Trash the remaining. When attacking, if you have a tamer in play, return 1 of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to his own hand. We're really just playing this one for the on-play skill so we can grab the pieces we need and grabbing a tamer to facilitate our engine. Alright, we also run 4 of this Gaomon. On play, both players draws 1 card from their deck. Yeah, you're giving your opponent a card, which you want to do in this deck, and you're also drawing a card just in case you're missing that one piece and you just want that one extra draw to kind of fix what you might be missing. Inheritable, your turn once per turn. When the effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. Alright, next on for the level 4s. This Gaogamon, when Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to the hand. We're not really using it for that effect. If anything, we're using it for its inheritable. When an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. We're running that one at 4. This Gaogamon, when Digivolving, if you don't have a Thomas H. Norstein in play, you may play one from your hand without playing the cost. This is one that we are using for its own Digivolution skill. Thomas H. Norstein will be important to this deck and it fulfilling its plays. So we want as many Thomas H. Norsteins in play. So, yeah. Alright, and all turns, when your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, this Digimon gains 1000 DP. We run only 2 copies of this Gaogamon. When attacking, once per turn, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, gain 1 memory. And when attacking, if you have a Tamer in play, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to his owner hand. Alright, for the level 5s, we are running 4 copies of this MirageGaogamon. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to its owner's hand. That way, if you're dealing with a potential Gazumon that does like to memory choke, you can just bounce that pesky thing back to the hand. Also, you're adding more cards to your opponent's hand, which you want them to have as thick a hand as possible for you to just maximize your effects on. Inheritable skill, when attacking, once per turn, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, unsuspend this Digimon. Next, we're running 4 of this MirageGaogamon. When attacking, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, the target of this Digimon's attack cannot be switched for the turn. In other words, it cannot be blocked, it cannot be redirected. It's inheritable all turns. When an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, unsuspend this Digimon. Alright, so that's it for the level 5s. Next up, we only run 2 of the BT-13 MirageGaogamon. It does have Evade, which has its uses, but we're not really worrying about that skill currently. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Tamer to its owner's hand. That gives you some flexibility. You want to continuously put cards to your opponent's hand to, again, maximize your effects. If they don't have a Digimon on the field and they're just hiding inside of raising area, but they do have a Tamer, you would Digivolve into this one just to bounce that back. And all turns, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you may play one Thomas H. Norstein from your hand without paying its memory cost because you want Thomas on the board. And this one doesn't care if you already have one on the board, so that's a nicety. We do run 3 copies of this MirageGaogamon for BT-11. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon to its owner's hands. If no Digimon card was returned by this effect, your opponent adds the top card of their security to their hand. So, for this Digimon's when Digivolving effect, you're almost always going to put something in your opponent's hand with that skill, unless your opponent is at 0. Secure it, it's going to happen. All turns, once per turn. When the effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. If you have been playing this deck the way it wants to be played, and your opponent's not just throwing cards out of their hand faster than you can put them back in there, you'll be gaining at least 2 memory for this one. Alright. And now we run 3 of the reason why we want as many Thomas H. Norsteins on the board as possible. MirageGaogamon Burst Mode, and this is the king of the deck. So Burst Digivolve, it costs 0 to Digivolve from MirageGaogamon by returning 1 Thomas H. Norstein in play to the owner's hand. However, at the end of the turn, trash the top card of this Digimon if you've done that. Okay, so you can effectively Digivolve into a level 7 for almost free. That's a real big plus. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Digimon to the owner's hand. Then for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. So again, you'll be gaining, if you've done things correctly, at least 2 memory when on Digivolving. Now, here's where it gets spicy. When attacking, if your opponent has 9 or more cards in hand, by placing cards from your opponent's hand to the bottom of their deck so that they only have 8 cards left, unsuspend this Digimon. So in other words, as long as your opponent has 9 cards in hand, you can continuously use this effect because it's not once per turn. Okay, so for the tamers of this deck, we only run 2 copies of Nikolai Petrov. Start of main phase, one of your Digimon with Gaogamon gains jamming. If once you've gotten the MirageGaogamon, the jamming's kind of not important because you're swinging with somewhere around like 16 to 17k. There's not that many things that exist outside of something like Death Exmon that you're going to run into and worry about. Also, your turn when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand. By suspending this tamer, gain 1 memory. We run 4 copies of the memory setter, start of your turn, etc. so forth and so on. When your Digimon with Gaomon or Gaogamon in its name attacks by suspending this tamer, both player draws cards from the top of their decks. In other words, if you have multiple Thomas H. Norsteins, you can attack, make your opponent have 9, discard 1 to the bottom, unsuspend, attack, do it again, attack, do it again, attack, do it again. You can easily get 6 or 7 attacks in with this deck, providing you have the right setup. Next, we run the old school BT-4 Thomas H. Norstein at 2. On play, draw a card. Okay. Main skill. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, you may suspend this tamer to unsuspend one of your Digimon with Gao in its name. This just adds to another free attack. So that's it for the tamers. Next up, the only option card that we play in this is Full Moon Meteor Impact. Return one of your opponent's Digimon to its owner's hands. Then, for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. With this deck, it should be somewhat consistent that your opponent is almost always at 8 cards in hand. So when you're using this, yes, it's 8 cards, but you'll gain 2 memory, so it's really 6 cards. So it's not that bad. And a security effect, return one of your opponent's Digimon to the owner's hand. So not bad altogether. So for the egg, we are running just Demi-Vmon. When this Digimon becomes unsuspended, which it should be doing quite often, it gains an additional 1000 DB for the turn. Alright, so that's the basic build. Now I'm going to show you the optimal play or setup for this deck. Alright, here we go. So we have one hypothetical setup for how the best use this deck. So it's not that outlandish. Just a couple key cards in hand. You only need 4. And 1 main stack. 3 of the tamers on the board. So for the opposing field, we just have some random. I just left the level 6, a tamer, and we have 2, 4, 6, 8 cards in hand. Alright, so what we do, we move out. Then the first thing we do is we Digivolve into MirageGaogamon. MirageGaogamon says, when Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 5. There is no level 5 on the field. Well, Digivolve for 4 first. However, there is cards in security, so we will take 1 card from security and put it into the hand. So, they currently have 9 cards in hand. Its on Digivolution skill says, all turns when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory for every 4. They have 9, so we gain 2 memory. Its inheritable effect says, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory, and we have 2 of those, so we gain 2 memory. We are back to 3. So, now, we also, where is it? At the start of main phase, one of your Digimon with Gao or Gaogamon gains jamming. So this Digimon has jamming. So, unless it runs into a security bomb, nothing's going to get rid of this Digimon. Alright, so, also, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, by suspending this tamer, gain 1 memory. We are now at 4. Okay, so first, we attack on security. As long as it's not a security bomb, as long as it's not a security bomb, the inheritable effect of MirageGaogamon, your opponent has at least 9 cards currently, so it immediately unsuspends, and your opponent is now down to 3 security. So, we attack again 1 more time, your opponent is down to 2 security. We rest the old Thomas H. Norstein, since your opponent has 8 or more cards, to unsuspend MirageGaogamon once again. Now, we will burst Digivolve into MirageGaogamon Burst Mode by returning this used Thomas H. Norstein. Then, first, let's finish resolving this skill. Return one of your opponent's Digimon to this hand. So we'll take this Rosemon, put it right back in the hand. This will go to trash. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards in hand. On Digivolving, for every 4 cards, gain 1 memory. So we gain 2 more memory for that skill, and now we play 1 Thomas H. Norstein from hand. Okay, that brings us down to 2. So MirageGaogamon will attack security. Since your opponent currently has 9 or more cards, by placing cards until they have 8, let's just take the top 2, you put them to the bottom of the deck. We unsuspend and take 1 more card out of security. We swing on security again. This time we rest Thomas H. Norstein to force your opponent to draw a card. So they draw. They now fulfill the qualifications to have 9 cards in hand. So we take 1 card from hand, put it to the bottom, and then we once again unsuspend. Another card is taken out of security. As long as it's not a security bomb, it doesn't matter because we have jamming. So, even if they had another set, we could attack once more time with another Thomas H. Norstein to force them to draw a card and put it to the bottom of the deck and unsuspend. And then we can attack 1 more time for game. For super game at that point. So effectively, we dealt 5, 6, 7 damage in 1 turn with 1 stack and 3 tamers. It did not take much in order to get this stack to do all that damage. This can potentially be something you may see at your locals or maybe even at regionals. Be aware and keep this deck on your radar. It does have some frightening potential for OTKing. Alright, so those are the decks that I'm covering for now. There will be more decks as we get closer to BT-13's release date, which should be this coming Friday. So I believe that's about 5, 6 more days. 6 if you're including today, which is Sunday at the making of this. So that's it. Let me know what you think about the decks, which one you may want to play, any improvements that could be made to the current configurations that I've had. All right, until next time, ladies and gents, thank you very much for joining in. Until then, bye-bye.